All right, greetings everyone. Welcome to the C-CAP virtual summer program in conjunction with or collaboration with CTE of Chicago Public Schools Summer Enrichment Program. I want to thank you all for signing in. Remember, this is week 2, day 3. Today we're going to focus on home-style pasta with salsa rojo or roja, excuse me, or basically a red sauce. We're going to walk you through the different processes. So I'm going to break this up in 2 parts. The first part is going to be how to make the pasta from start to finish, and then we're going to go into the second half of the videos, or part 2 is going to focus on the rojo sauce, which is very simple. So with that said and done, I also got to point out, remember this is a recorded session, so by signing in or logging in to watching this, you agree with any I'll say disclaimers that you've already signed into to watch this particular portion of the video. C-CAP is honored to get into this particular virtual setting for the first time because we're dealing with the COVID situation. We've had to pivot and move around and provide our programs virtually online. So we look forward to getting back to I guess I'll say a little bit of normalcy and getting back into the kitchen and providing these same recipes and ingredients for all students who are part of our program and all of our sister locations, as well as here in Chicago as well. So nevertheless, here we go. We're going to make this pasta. The first thing we're going to do is measure out, as the recipe calls, it calls for 1 cup of flour. And I'm going to measure out that 1 cup of flour. I'm going to level off my measuring cup to make sure I'm getting out exactly 1 cup of flour. And again, it's just basic all-purpose flour. Some people have asked me about different other ingredients that you can use, different other types of flours. You can use other types of flour as well, but the measurements may be a little different. I'm just going with the basic all-purpose because that's something that we can typically get at all times and have access to it. You can even buy flour at the dollar store. I didn't buy this at the dollar store, but again, it's pretty much basic. What I've just added is the half a teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to mix my dry. I'm going to set that to the side. Next, I'm going to grab my liquids. And when I say my liquids, I'm going to move this to the side so we can see this a little better. With my liquids, I'm going to, at least this is how I look at recipes. Recipes are normally broken up into 2, wet ingredients and dry ingredients. So what I'm doing is I'm going to bring together my dry, which I just did, and I'm going to bring together all of my wet ingredients. Typically, ingredients are always like that, meaning that they allow you to bring your wet and dry ingredients together, meaning individually. So what I'm going to do is just bring them all together. Just washing my hands here on the side. And that is my hand without the glove. Since I've gotten a little bit of egg on this other glove, I'm going to take it off, put on a different glove so that I do not contaminate areas or my surfaces. All right, so again, I have my egg here as well. I also have about 4 tablespoons of water in here already. I had already put that in there. Now I'm going to take my olive oil, and the olive oil, I think the recipe asks for about a half a teaspoon of, asks for about a half a teaspoon of olive oil. So I'm going to put in a half a teaspoon of olive oil. Maybe a little pinch more as well. It won't hurt it because I may just have to compensate with a little bit more flour. But there we go. That's my half a tablespoon. You may find other recipes out there that ask for or require different levels of oil or fat. I myself like to put that amount in there, and it won't hurt you. But make sure you follow the recipe to T because it's there for a reason. So nevertheless, I have my all of my liquid here, so to speak, or all of my liquid volume, so to speak. I have my 4 tablespoons of water. I also have my half a teaspoon of olive oil here. I have my dry there. Just for conversation purposes, I'm going to mix my eggs. And just to let you know, the eggs here, actually, you know what? I'm reading this recipe a little differently. It said actually the recipe requires a half a tablespoon. So first I did that measurement was that measurement was actually, excuse me, let me slow down. The recipe asked for a half a teaspoon. What I put in there first was a half of a half of a teaspoon. So what I need to do is also put in 1 tablespoon as well. I already put in a little bit more from that first measurement. I'm going to drop that in there as well, because remember, if you know the math or culinary math, you know that 1.5 teaspoons is a half of a tablespoon. So just putting that out there. So again, I'm glad I caught myself. So again, the recipe, again, I'm slowing down. The recipe asks for a half a tablespoon. 1.5 teaspoons equals a half of a tablespoon. So just FYI. So mix my liquids together, so to speak. So there's my liquids, real simple, just mixing together. Some recipes out there online will say that you can just put the eggs in there whole. I actually like to just mix everything together. Now, speaking about mixing everything together, I'm just going to take a whisk. I'm just going to whisk my ingredients together. You can do this by hand as well, but since I have my whisk always available here at my trusty station here, I'm just going to whisk all of the ingredients together. And there we go. Now, I'm going to take my liquid. I'm going to, as some individuals say, make a well. So I'm going to make a well there in the middle. Add in my liquid, and I'm just going to stir and bring liquid together with the flour. And I'm just gradually bringing it all in, whisking, or in this case stirring with an egg to bring all the dry into the liquid. So now I'm just going to pour it all in, make sure I get everything. Put that to the side. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this in a bowl. I like to do it in a bowl because this keeps everything contained. But I know that some individuals, I've seen some recipes where individuals do it on the bench, meaning they do it on the flat surface just like that there. And we're going to get there. But what I like to do is just do it in a bowl because it keeps my mess together and it's less cleanup. So there we go. Now, what I'm going to start doing, I'm going to put this in the sink here, get that out the way. So now what I'm going to do is start bringing everything together. Now I've tested this recipe out a couple of times, so I've had my trial and errors. So I put in the right amount of liquid, I put in the right amount of olive oil, and definitely again, I'm glad I caught myself because the recipe again said half of a tablespoon. Again, half a tablespoon is 1.5 teaspoons. So, and I just wanted to reiterate that because I know somebody may have said, hey, what did you say? So again, that was my third time mentioning it. But the recipe asked for half of a teaspoon, so I just needed to make sure I got that in there correctly. So nevertheless, I'm bringing everything together. You still see it looks like I'm going to say it's not necessarily combining like it should. The consistency or the texture that I'm looking for is almost like Play-Doh, a smooth Play-Doh. And you notice we haven't gotten it, that's still crumbly, almost like sand. So I'm trying to get everything incorporated. And we'll get there. You just have to keep bringing the mixture together. So just going down the recipe. This recipe again will yield about 3 servings or 3 people. Again, home style pasta. We're looking at 1 egg, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, half a tablespoon of olive oil, 2 to 4 tablespoons of water, and 4 quarts of water. 4 quarts of water. I'm pretty sure you can see this from here, but have my pot here going for the pasta because we're going to actually follow through and try to make this pasta when it finishes going through the kneading process, and we let it rest. But that is the process, or at least the ingredient roll down. Method of prep is very similar to making, prepping and cooking regular pasta in the box. So again, trying to bring all the dough together. You still see I have a couple of granules of flour at the very bottom of the bowl that I'm still going to pick up. All I'm doing is just pressing the dough into that mixture to pull it up because I want to make sure I use this entirely. I don't want to leave anything in the bowl. So as we're going through this process, we're going through the pickup stage. And the pickup stage again is basically where the dough is picking up any loose particles. And that's exactly what we're doing now. And we're getting there because you notice we have less of the particles at the bottom of the bowl. Yeah, we're getting there. All right, good. And now you see why I like to keep everything in the bowl, because the dough does the work for you and it allows the items to be picked up in this bowl. And it's not, your mess is not all over the place. Alright, and also let me point this out as well, since this is about my third time going through this recipe, through my trial and error. The recipe says 2 to 4 tablespoons of water. I find that 4 tablespoons exactly works for this particular recipe, and it will yield exactly about 2 to 3 portions of pasta. Alright, so we're there, good. Okay, so now, this is my dough. I'm not finished yet, but I'm going to put my working bowl to the side so I can have more room. Now, this is what gets a little, what I call gets a little, you get a workout. So I'm going to start going through the process of kneading the dough. I'm going to take my dough, put it down on my working bench here, and I'm going to start working it out, or kneading it on my flat surface. Also make sure that your surface has nothing else on this surface. Make sure you clean the surface. Make sure there's no other crumbs, no cracker crumbs, no pepper, you name it, no herbs or anything like that. Make sure that the surface is not wet, because your dough will pick up those items and it'll get embedded in the dough. Unless you want a pasta which has like spinach or other herbs in it, which is a little different, but you would have put that in the dough when you were mixing everything together, and it wouldn't be on your bench like this. So notice again, through the kneading process, there's 2 types of kneading methods. When I say kneading methods, meaning how you work the dough. You can either press it down like I am here and work it into itself, okay? Or you can do what we call, I want to call this the heart method. The heart method is basically where you just push. Notice how my hand is pulling the dough, and I'm just going like a V shape, or I'm making a heart shape. And you can do it either one hand, or you can do it 2 hand. And you kind of like it doing 2 hands, like this here. Okay, because at some shape or fashion, or at some time you're going to switch up because you're getting a workout. So that's why I call it the workout stage. I'm also noticing that because I've touched the dough with my bare hand, which is no problem, because again, we all know with sanitation, this dough is going to go through a kill step or a heating process. So I can, technically speaking, make this dough with bare hands, and I like to touch it as well because it can kind of tell you if it needs more flour, because it may get a little tacky. So you got to play around with the dough as well. Now, we talked about the two kneading methods, okay? Either the press method, where you're just pressing, rolling into itself and coming back and forth, or you do the V method or the heart method. The most important thing that you have to remember when you're kneading dough, you have to knead dough from anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. And when I say 8 to 10 minutes, it is literally 8 to 10 minutes. So we have been kneading this dough for about 2 minutes now. So we're looking at anywhere from 6 more minutes to, I'm going to say 8 more minutes. And it's very important that you go through that process. Now, if you all remember, you had a recipe task worksheet that I put actually in the recipe packet, and you had to answer a question. One of the questions asked, what happens to dough when you're kneading a ball of flour dough, like such as what we're doing now. Now, I'm not going to answer that question now because we'll answer this during our review. But the most important thing you need to make sure is that you're kneading it, and then you understand why you have to knead it. I'll open up a little bit just for conversation purposes. When you're kneading a dough, you're bringing 2 proteins together. We're not going to talk about those proteins now. We'll talk about it in our review. But those 2 proteins are separate in powdered flour. In order for us to bring those proteins together, those protein molecules together, we have to add water to help them, to help them get to know each other in this process of kneading. So by us kneading it, we're forcing the two proteins to get together so that they create something. And we'll talk about that again during our review and discussion. And it's your responsibility to find that answer. I mean, what's happening during the kneading process. So, nevertheless, we're still working this dough out. Again, we probably have at this point, most likely, it's probably been 3 minutes, possibly 4 minutes. So we're looking at like another 6 to 7 minutes, or 5 to 10 minutes, I'll say. So you're working it out, and notice I've switched it up. I'm doing like the two-handed heart method or V method, where I'm rolling the dough into itself back and forth and creating that V pattern. Again, I do know some people that can sit here all day and roll pasta with one hand. Either way, you're going to get a workout. All right. So I'm not sure you can pick up on from camera-wise what's happening, but the dough is actually doing what it's supposed to do, because we're forcing those two protein molecules to come together. And as we make them come together, they're, for the lack of a better word, they're getting to know each other. And we're forcing them to conversate and work out together. So again, we're creating another substance. Okay. And I like this. I'm just feeling on it, I can definitely tell that it is working. The kneading process is working, because again, to me, it feels like Play-Doh. And I'm glad I'm going to come back to this Play-Doh analogy or example. I'm going to say a firm Play-Doh, so not like a real soft Play-Doh. You know, something where you can pull apart and play around with. And you're not saying we can't pull this apart and play around with it, but it's not. Some Play-Dohs, when you work it, you know, it still keep its shape. Some Play-Dohs, when you do like this, you know, it's so pliable, it moves even when you're not really holding it. So again, I'm going to say a firm Play-Doh. Okay, I'm going to turn my water down a little bit. My water is actually boiling already, and I'm not ready there, or I'm not at that stage yet. All right, so we're still there. Just working it out. And again, you're probably going to do this for about 8 to 10 minutes. Now keep in mind, when you get it to that particular area, or to the right area, and I'll show you how I test to make sure that it's at the right consistency, you're going to let it rest. Now, you'll notice if you've seen this or looked at certain recipes, they may say let it rest for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. I would say 30 minutes, but you got to let it rest, because once you bring these two proteins together, you create a third substance, or a third, you force it into another area. And I don't want to give the name away, but once you create that structure, I'll call it, you have to let it rest, because you have to let the dough, because what you're trying to do is create a elasticity in the dough. You got to let the dough rest, because think about it, you're agitating the two proteins, you're creating a different structure. And I guess I'll kind of give it away. There's 3 G's, and you have to have all 3 of those G's, or those G proteins, to help you when you're making any type of dough. And particularly, I'm talking about pasta dough. So I know you all may have researched and found out about kneading bread dough as well. Kind of the same process. You got those 3 G's, but what you're trying to do here is make sure those 3 G's, or those 3 G proteins, you're trying to make sure that you're forcing them together, because it'll affect your end product. All right, so now I'm going to switch up and go back and forth with. All right, I think we're almost there. I really wish you all can feel this dough, because it definitely is a lot different than when we first started. Okay, you can notice it's a little bit more smoother. You don't see that from when we first started. You don't see like all of the particles that were left over the bottom of that bowl. You don't see those anymore because again, we've kneaded it, and we continue to knead it, and it's bringing the structures together. Like we're literally forcing this dough into a substance or a structure that it was not part of. It was not meant to be unless we added that water and some other ingredients. And again, those other ingredients, the salt kind of helps with taste as well. It also helps with the scientific structure of the bread as well. Because believe it or not, there's some, I hate to get real scientific, but there's amino acids in the bread that we are allowing to build and become part of the I can't even say two, the 3 G's as well. So, and I bring that into the equation because amino acids are like sugar, and if we were making bread or something like that, we'd have a brown color to it as well. Again, when we finish this, we won't have any browning because again, we're making straight pasta. But if you wanted to fry or saute that pasta, you'll definitely get a brown color because there's some amino acids and sugars in flour as well, which comes from the wheat grain as well. So we're getting there, and I'm liking this. I think we are about to wrap this up. I'm going to turn that fire down completely off, to be honest. All right. So we are all there. All right. All right. There we go. Yeah, we've definitely been needing about 10 minutes. So there we go. Notice the dough. Now here's how I test my dough to make sure that it is actually ready. Notice this. Okay, I'm not sure if you all saw that, but notice how it bounced back. And I'm going to do it one more time. Or it's spraying back into shape. You get a nice round on it. Do that one more time. Okay, you didn't see it. I'm not sure of the light, but it definitely bounced back. It still has a little bit of indentation on it, which is no problem. But this is definitely the shape that I want. Okay, some other things that you can point out, or I will point out. It's not too dry. Still a little moisture in there. You'll know that if you work with pasta, and it is, I'm gonna say, yeah, it's too hard. In order to get it right, you'd have to add a little bit more water, but this is perfect. This is spot on in terms of what we want. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I've already made another batch of pasta here. And the reason why is because we have to let this rest for anywhere from 30 minutes to about an hour. Some individuals says let it rest a little bit longer. I think this pasta dough is actually rested long enough. I made this definitely about 40 minutes ago, so it's been rested long enough. This one here I'm going to let rest a little bit longer. The most important thing when you rest pasta, you're going to put a little bit of plastic wrap on it. You can also do a little bit of flour as well. Just roll it in there so it doesn't dry out too much. Take your pasta, put it in the plastic wrap, and there you go. Okay. Now I just had it here underneath the measuring cup there because I wanted it out of the view. I didn't want you all to see it, but nevertheless it's there. You normally will let it rest. Now take the pasta out the bag here. Okay, and it's just right. I mean, y'all can see that shine on it only because it was in that plastic wrap, but nevertheless, again, there it is. Now, you can notice I've already put a little flour down on the countertop, but before I cut into that, well, before I get started, I'm going to cut into it. Now, I have a bench scraper or a dough cutter. You can also use your knife as well to cut your pasta. Since all intents and purposes, I grabbed my dough cutter. I'm just going to use my dough cutter. I'm going to cut this into half. Okay. Now I'm going to cut those halves into quarters. Okay. I'm going to take my quarters, at least 3 of them. Take them, put them back in my plastic, cover it for a little bit so that I can keep the moisture there. Spread my flour out. I'm gonna make sure I keep my bench organized. Put my knife back over on my workstation there. Now I'm gonna take my dough and I'm gonna try to roll it back into a ball there. Now I'm gonna do this here. I'm gonna spread out or push out my pasta. Now I'm going to spread it out. I'm going to spread it out, and then I'm actually going to continue to spread it so I get this oval shape. Alright, I'll spread it a little bit more. Now normally, this would be a good opportunity to mention this, normally you do this in a pasta machine. Again, I don't have a pasta machine. Well, actually, take that back. I do have a pasta machine. I have a pasta machine that does everything. It brings everything together, but it doesn't roll everything out. So we're going to do everything old school, but you can actually get a pasta machine or a dough roller, and it'll roll out. You can crank it through your pasta machine, and it'll actually do all this work for you. But I'm going to do it old school because some people don't actually have that device or that machine. So now that I made this oval shape, I'm going to take it off my surface, take my dough, let's see if you all see that there. Okay, take it, now I'm going to fold it into itself. I'm going to turn it this way so I create kind of an envelope. I'm going to take those 2 halves, fold them over each other, and now I'm going to fold out my dough again. Now this is very important because again, we're trying to continue to bring together those 3 G's, or in this case the 2 G's, to make that 3rd G. Again, you're going to tell me what that is, but as you notice, that seam of the 2 pieces are now working into each other. Okay, you can barely even see those flaps, or those 2 flaps that I brought together, and I'll bring that a little closer so you can see. Now I'm going to bring those 2 halves together again. Okay, now I'm going to roll the dough again. Okay, probably going to do this one more time, meaning roll the pieces together. Because again, what I'm trying to do is bring that structure, and I'm trying to make sure that I get the right structure or consistency with the pasta. I'm going to fold it over this time. A little bit more flour on my working station. I'm going to fold this piece that way, this piece that way again, fold it. Maybe I'll turn it a little bit this way as well. So the goal here again, I'm just trying to flatten the dough out as thin as I can. Y'all see the more force I put down on the pasta dough, the more I stretch it out. So you're trying to make sure that you stretch it out as thin as you can, because that's going to help with your pasta. Pick it up, I'm going to turn it over. This time I'm not going to fold. My goal here is just to try to get this dough as thin as I can. Put a little more flour on the dough so I can feel the moisture coming through. It's getting a little tacky, and I don't want it to stick to my rolling pin here. Oops, sorry about that. My finger went a little bit past the board here. Just turn it on my water, bring that back up to temperature. And again, I'm just trying to roll the dough out as thin as I can. Now, a good way to know that your dough is thin enough is that if you can see, I know you all may not be able to see on camera, but I can see the other side of my working bench through my through this piece of dough. And again, unfortunately, I just pressed a little bit too hard. You all can see that piece there. So I pressed just a little bit too hard. So I'm going to bring those, just going to go back over my flour to bring that piece back together through the elasticity and the tackiness of the dough. I'm just trying to bring that back in. Okay. I think we're there, with the exception of my edge here. I can definitely tell it's not as thick like I want it, or thin as I want it, excuse me. Alright, so we're getting there. I can definitely tell just by picking it up. I'm going to put a little bit of flour on this surface again, because as I'm pressing it, I'm actually also bringing out some of the moisture. I don't want to bring out too much of the moisture, because it's going to get a little too tacky. But we're definitely getting there. Again, I'm trying to get this as thin as I can. That's why some people like using that pasta machine or the pasta roller, because it actually does the work for you. But again, I like to show you from scratch, because sometimes you don't have those machines. But this is definitely the direction you want to go in. Alright, we're almost there. And just FYI, I can tell that let me step back just a little bit, pushing my glasses back, and I'm not touching my face with my bare hands. I'm just using my forearm here to push my glasses back, because I don't want to put any sweat or anything on from my body onto this dough. Again, for those individuals who took that food handler course, you definitely know what I mean. So there we go, and looks like I've gone a little bit too far, because you see I've actually gone into the dough right here, but I'm going to follow through because I want to show you all how this looks. So I'm going to get my knife, and some people actually say that you can what you can do is cut your dough into like a square piece. I'm going to follow through. Actually, I'll take that back. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut my pasta, because this entire work surface is about 12 inches. Again, this is basically a piece of tile that I have on my countertop here. Again, it's food grade, but I know this is 12 inches, so I'm a little bit under 12 inches here, so that's probably about, I'm going to say, yeah, it's probably about 11 inches, okay, because because I've actually edged on my knife some indicators, so I know what's 1 inch, what's 2 inches, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm probably off about 1 inch. Yeah, so this is about 11 inches wide, and I'm going to keep my dough like this, because we're going to make fettuccine. And to do that, I take that back. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this in half. And be very careful when you're doing this. Okay, I'm going to put that piece there on the side. And now I'm going to work my dough into I'm going to say the length that I want, or to the shape that I want. So we're going to do fettuccine. I'm just pressing the knife into the dough. And this is what I'm going to do. Let me work smarter, not harder. Excuse me 1 second. Because I know someone out there is going to say that I was not doing that right, so let me do it correctly. Grab my cutting board, stabilize it with a mat or wet paper towel, and now that's going to be a little bit better. So here we go. Okay. Just going to cut my pieces. Just cutting it and then dragging a knife. Again, this is going to be, that's why we call it home style or rustic pasta, because it's not going to be perfect. But I definitely want to show you all how it looks, the fettuccine from scratch here. Alright, just putting this on my bench. And I'm even still going to use these pieces here. I'm noticing my edge here is a little bit thick, so I'm going to roll this out. And the reason being is because I want to make sure that all the pieces are the same thinness, because they're going to cook, and when they do cook, it's going to shrink a little bit. I'll throw that in there as well. And there we go. So now I'm going to go to this piece here. Again, this piece here, same situation. I'm going to cut. Just bring my knife through. There we go. Bring it on the side here. Keep in mind, guess what? This is just one serving of pasta. I can't even say it's one serving of pasta. Because remember, we still have 3 other pieces left. Oh. All right. Alright, so there we go. And here are our pasta, or our homemade, home-style pasta. Now, I'm going to sprinkle a little flour on them so it does not dry out. But this here is our home-style pasta. And we've gotten that done in under, I'm going to say under 30, what was it, under 35 minutes. So that's just one portion right there. Put my knife back there. Now I'm going to keep that on the side, meaning my knife on the side, because we still, again, we have 3 other portions. But what I want to do is work the ingredients, those other ingredients for our red sauce. I'm going to get those ingredients out as well. So remember, with our red sauce, if you look at those ingredients for the red sauce actually is nothing more than our pico de gallo, because you have all the ingredients. The only difference is you have a half a teaspoon of sugar and you have 1 tablespoon of ketchup, and you're just adding in 1 tablespoon of water in there as well. Remember, this is our red sauce from yesterday's recipe. Again, always talking about cross-utilization. I'm going to take this red sauce, and not all of it, but I'm going to take this red sauce. I'm going to mix it with this first batch of pasta so that we have it, and that you see what the sauce or what the end product looks like. And I know it's a small amount, but again, I just want to show you all how it looks. Right. So this pasta here is most likely, again, let me go back to our pasta. This pasta is probably going to take about no more than 3 minutes to cook. So I don't necessarily want to throw this into our boiling water yet. And also, just thinking about this, let me add in just a pinch of salt to our water. And I haven't done that already, so I'm doing that now. Just a pinch of salt. Some individuals are going to say olive oil. I'll put in the olive oil as well. It's probably about 1 teaspoon. Now, in terms of our red sauce, I want to make sure that the red sauce is, I'll say, equally measured. So what I'm going to do is put about, just want to get the right measuring cup. Yeah, I'm going to do about 1.5 cups of our red sauce. Or again, I'm just changing the name for all intents and purposes. Notice again, this is our pico de gallo. But what I'm going to do is use about, again, 1.5 cups of the pico de gallo. Again, we're going to call this recipe, or we're going to call this a red sauce, or salsa rojo, or roja. Again, I'm just taking a spatula, putting in about 1.5 ounces. Oh, excuse me, 1.5 cups. I'm so sorry, 1.5 cups of our sauce. Now, since I'm showing you this, I've actually heard some individuals talk about not to take pico de gallo or salsa and actually use that to make a red sauce. However, my mind is telling me that this is the exact same thing that you use to make a mother sauce or typical red sauce. So I'm going to follow through with it because, again, I think it should be easy crossover. It should be very easy. But what we're gonna do is actually do about, again, like the recipe is asking for. If you look on that recipe page 13 of the recipe packet, it's asking about about a half a teaspoon of sugar. So I'm not sure if you all just saw, but I just pulled my sugar out. So I'm going to take half a teaspoon of sugar. I'm going to add that in to my mixture. And put this up because I want to make sure I stay organized. And I'm also going to add in about, I'm going to say about 1 teaspoon, excuse me, I'm so sorry, 1 tablespoon of ketchup. And yes, I am just putting in regular ketchup. Nothing real fancy. Again, if you have fancy ketchup, you can, but there we go. Okay. I'm going to add that to my mixture. And to make sure I get it all, I'm going to take my spatula. I'm going to get it all out. I'm also going to add water in here as needed. But again, what I'm trying to do now is bring together all of my items. Remember, if you ever made a red sauce, when I say a red sauce in this particular situation, a marinara sauce, or some cultures they call it a gravy, you have to make sure that you put in stewed tomatoes. You got to make sure you put in a tomato paste and all your other ingredients. And we have that here in our pico de gallo, or our AKA salsa. So I want to make sure I cross utilize and use this over and cross over to another recipe, because I don't want to lose that, and I don't want this to go bad. Again, in this mixture here, it won't go bad either. We'll use this for something else. But I'm going to get this going. And it looks like I'm going to have to light that manually for something. I'm not sure why I had to do that manually, but nevertheless, there it is. At the same time, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is add in my pasta that's been sitting here. Now, before I add this to my pasta, something that I want to point out is the simple fact that my olive oil in here, again, it's probably about half a tablespoon. You don't want to necessarily use this right off the bat. Meaning the pasta, you can store this in the refrigerator for up to about 3 to 5 days. Fresh pasta, that is. And if you wanted to store this and make it ahead of time, you can actually freeze it just like this. Just put it like in a gallon-sized bag or something like that, or individually plastic wrapped, and put it in a freezer in a Ziploc bag. You can store this anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. And again, I'm not putting the pasta in a saute pan. I'm going to put this in my water. And since it's so close to my flame here, I'm just going to do this here. Again, that should take about 3 minutes, and that should be perfect timing for this sauce here as well. I'm just going to add this to the pan. And my goal here is to break my tomatoes down so that I can make this sauce a little bit more pliable so it sticks to the pasta. Now, again, I'm using a saute pan here, but you can also use a saucepan as well. Again, I'm so used to grabbing saute pans. Just clean it up a little bit as I go. Remember, I still have extra pasta on the side. Again, because this recipe will serve anywhere from 2 to 3 individuals. So again, please keep in mind that this here is just, I'm going to say one individual, not even one individual, because technically speaking, I'd have to, me myself personally, I'd have to use probably make cut 2 of these, or when I say cut 2, is press them and make it into pasta. But again, you can probably get about 2 to 3 servings out of this portion. So technically speaking, I should have followed through, but again, for time purposes, I want you all to see this and see how it goes. Not to mention, plus we're about 45 minutes into the taping, so I just want to make sure I show you how everything looks as we follow through with that recipe. So excuse me as I step off camera. What I'm doing is actually just finding my strainer so I can have everything on the side and ready. And as you can see, well, I'm not sure if you see that, but our sauce sauce here is actually going very well. It's actually, what I want to do is kind of reduce that down. Got my strainer here on the side. And I'm just prepping the strainer so when I get the water, get everything ready, I can actually go straight from the stove to my strainer. Just cleaning my spatula off so I can move my pasta around a little bit. All right, yeah, this is smelling really good because again, you have the sugar. You also have that extra ketchup in here, acting almost like a tomato paste. So what I'm trying to do is reduce this liquid down so it's not as heavy. Now, while we're going through this process, some other things I want to point out is at the ending of this reduction, we can add like a cold pat of butter, and it'll help emulsify and get a nice little shine to the sauce. I'm not going to add the cold butter in here because I didn't actually prep it. However, the goal here, what I'm trying to do is make sure that I reduce this mixture of the red sauce down to a nice sauce, because if you look at it, it's kind of still a little loose, and I want to actually reduce it. So I'm going to turn my flame down on my pasta there, try not to overcook it, and I think it's definitely been past 3 minutes. So I'm going to pull it out or strain it, because I still have some more time on my red sauce, and I got to make sure I reduce it because again, I don't want it too watery. And again, it's going to definitely take a little bit of time for the tomatoes to reduce down. I'm looking at my pasta, and I can definitely tell that my pasta is ready. Just going to touch my pasta. Yeah, my pasta's definitely ready. So, bear with me as I grab the oven mitts in, because I'm going to make sure I got to make sure I stop this cooking process, and I'm going to cool it down a little bit. Put that back there. So what I'm doing now, ladies and gentlemen, I am literally letting my pasta, I'm going to run some cold water over it so that it can cool down, because I want to stop this pasta from overcooking. Okay? And it again looks like egg noodles, but again, there we go. That's homemade pasta right there. Okay? So I'm going to turn my water on here and let it cool my pasta down, because I don't want to overcook it, because I don't want gummy pasta. I want a pasta with a nice bite to it. not overcooked, not underdone, just right. So that's one reason why I'm running the cold water over it so it can cool it down. And you all can't see the sauce here, but it's definitely reducing. And at the same time, the heat is breaking down our tomatoes in, and it is becoming more of a red sauce, just as I suspected. It's definitely breaking down. And I'm also going to do a taste test here as well, because remember, the only thing I added in here, I don't even think I didn't even have to add too much water. This is exactly the direction I wanted to go in. I can see the skins are coming loose from the tomatoes here, which is good. It tells me that the heat is breaking it down as much as it's right in the right direction that it should be in. I'm going to taste my pasta here. Just doing a little taste test of the pasta. And I know I'm off screen, I'm tasting it. But okay, this is perfect. This is definitely right consistency where it should be. Now I'm going to come back and toss out my tasting spoon in for my pasta. Now I'm going to do a little taste test on my red sauce. Okay, so this is just me. I'm going to say in terms of balance and flavor, I'm going to add another teaspoon, or I'm going to say like a quarter teaspoon of sugar, because I want to balance these flavors out. Yeah, let's just go with a half. So again, I have a quarter teaspoon here. My half teaspoon is already in my sink. It's in my dish bucket there. But again, this is a quarter teaspoon, so 2/4 make a half. So I'm going to make that a half a teaspoon. Because again, I want to balance these flavors out. Just doing a little saute in the pan. And the reason why I added that extra half a tablespoon of sugar is because I noticed that it was still a little bit it's still real sharp, because I can still taste a little bit of the lime juice. There's still a little bit of salt in here from the recipe, from the previous yesterday's recipe. So again, I want to balance these flavors out. And now I see why the recipe says the first time around it said actually a half a teaspoon of sugar, because if you work with small increments, you can always add extra to balance out. So I don't know if you all can see that. However, the mixture has definitely reduced a lot of the liquid that was in there as well. There's no need to add any extra water. But this is definitely going in the right direction that I wanted to go in. Again, don't let anybody tell you that you can't take pico de gallo or salsa and turn it into a red sauce. And notice I'm trying to stay away from marinara, because technically speaking it's not a classic marinara sauce. But it's definitely what we call a red sauce that we can add to some pasta. We can add some other items in this particular dish, such as bacon and cheddar. We can add ground beef, anything else as well. All right. So just tasting. All right. Okay, it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. All right. Okay, now you get some of this residue off the pan here. All right, so I'm going to step off the screen. I want to make sure I check my pasta, because I want to make sure I'm going to add my mixture, or my pasta to my mixture. Check my pasta. Again, my pasta's all cool down now. You don't see any steam coming off of it because again I was running the cold water on there. Now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to add my pasta to my sauce. I'm going to add it back to the stove, even though the stove is not on. I'm just going to add it back in. I'm just mixing the mixture together. And notice how it's coating the pasta. Okay. Again, you can add something like, you can add shrimp to this. You can add pancetta. You can add ham, bacon, ground beef, chicken. Okay, we had some of that chicken left over from our chicken tacos from day one. We could easily add this to the dish, and that would actually add a little meat to the dish. Okay, but again, there we go, fresh pasta. Now I'm gonna fresh pasta in our Rojo sauce, or sauce Rojo. Now I'm gonna take this, gonna bring our plate over. Let me move our cutting board, everything to the side. Just give me a clean fork. Bring everything on the plate there. All right. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Home-style pasta with salsa roja, or a red sauce. You can add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Unfortunately, I just found out this morning that I'm out of Parmesan cheese. It wasn't part of the recipe, but nevertheless, that is definitely how our pasta would look. Again, you can add chicken to this. You can add Parmesan cheese. And I'm going to take a bite here just to taste a little of it as well. And that is just right. Definitely just right. Even though I'm even going to add this in here. I actually forgot to put the Italian seasoning in this as well. My apologies. However, it still tastes just as good without the Italian seasoning. This is pretty good. Again, I hope you all enjoyed it as I continue to eat this. That is pretty good. So again, this is home-style pasta with salsa roja, and all I did was just take the pico de gallo from our previous recipes and cross-utilize it for this particular dish as well. Hope you all enjoyed it. Again, this is week 2, day 3, home-style pasta with salsa roja. You can find this on page 11, 12, and 13, which will actually outline how to make this particular dish, and I think you'll love it. Just FYI, again, you can even take store-bought pasta and add this to the dishes. Add store-bought pasta and mix it as well. Cook it the exact same way that you normally do out the box, and mix it in with salsa. Just make sure you follow the steps to reduce the liquid down. Someone asked me, can you also do this with store-bought salsa? You can do the exact same thing, but just taste that store-bought salsa before you actually get into, I'll say experimenting with it or adding any other items in. But I definitely like what I did here. Hope you all enjoy it as well. Again, just don't forget to put your Italian seasoning here as well, to add that authentic Italian taste to it. So other than that, that is our dish, and we'll get into our discussion. Thank you.